Okay, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. I've just been having a look on Twitter, and there's lots of great ideas for things that we can do, which is fantastic, and lots of great feedback from your workshop, so that's brilliant. And we have been trending on Twitter, so one of my outcomes for the day has been achieved, so that's amazing. As many of you know, at Good Things Foundation, we care a lot about the outcomes that people gain through digital inclusion, through gaining digital skills, and of course by being connected to their community as well as to the online world. And so we're really thrilled to have a panel here now this morning about how can digital inclusion make people healthier. And I'm sure a lot of you in the room also work on that. We've got a great panel, so what we're going to do is each person is going to introduce themselves just for a couple of minutes, and then we're just going to have a conversation. So get your questions ready. I think we might be able to use Slido, I'm not sure, but anyway, I need to be taught. Yes, we can use Slido, I've had a thumbs up. So if while people are talking you've got some ideas, pop it onto Slido. And I'll also be showing my netball skills with the microphone again. Okay, so we're going to go this way. So Alexis, you work for Connected Nottinghamshire, so do you want to tell us a bit about your work and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Alexis Farrow, and my job is Head of Strategy and Transformation for a digital programme that works across health and social care in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. I also lead on a programme of work that looks at providing access to digital health and care services to our population to improve their health. When we developed that programme of work, it quite quickly became apparent that digital inclusion was such a key aspect so that we could offer health and care services to all of our population. We recognised that we had to improve some of their confidence and skills, so we've set up a digital inclusion programme of work as well. We've been working with Good Things Foundation on a couple of pathfinders as well. We've also set up some digital hubs on the high street and some support networks through things like Self-Help UK and other third sector organisations. So the question is, I guess, do I think that digital inclusion can make people healthier? I think it's definitely got a part to play. I think it improves the health and well-being of a lot of people. And what we've recognised through some of our digital inclusion work is actually it's the social inclusion aspect of it as well. So sometimes there's people that don't see anybody 6 days a week. They pop into one of our hubs on the high street, and that's their only social interaction that people have.
Great, thank you very much. So Paul, you're next. Go on.
I'm Paul Davies. I'm the owner, manager, kind of do everything person at a centre in Teesside, a small place called Saltburn. We started Destinations quite a while ago, 2006, and have been involved in lots of things to do with digital inclusion and social inclusion as well for our area. That's included employability skills, it's included basic digital skills, perhaps some qualifications for learners, and more the sort of social community side of what we try and do for the regions that we're in. The question there, do I think digital helps with health? Absolutely, really. I think over the years what we've seen is lots of people come to us with a variety of questions that some are very, very related to health. Can you help me find a GP because I've just moved to the area? I've been diagnosed with a certain condition and I've been recommended to take up some exercise, change my diet, it's all that sort of thing. And they've given me advice, and on the bottom of this leaflet it says more advice is available at www, and I've never used www, so please can you start me off with that one? Right the way through to perhaps more involved but very much just as important people coming to us and saying, I'm struggling with a lifestyle change here. I've become unemployed, I've lost a partner, and it's the emotional health and well-being side of things that group of people perhaps are looking for answers for. And I actually think that digital, yes, it can address some specifics, but also it's just a really good tool, a really good area to bring people together. And that emotional side of it, I think, is crucial.
Brilliant. So, Saira, you used to be at North West London CCG,
Yeah.
and is it your first week at ORCHA?
Yeah, it's actually my fourth day in ORCHA. So my name's Saira Arif, everyone. I was the program manager for North West London CCG's Digital Innovation and Citizen program, which is a mouthful. So my role was really around ensuring that our patients had a local tool to access. So we had a patient app that was sort of deployed amongst 8 CCGs that we cover. And part of that learning that we had whilst we deployed that app was around, well, actually people can have this tool, they can take the tool back, but whether they use it or not is a different matter. And part of our learning then was, well, actually there's nothing in North West London to, really provide patients with an education around apps, and not even just apps, but how to download an app, or even just how to access the App Store or the Play Store. There was hundreds of questions that we had from a lot of our patient representatives who said, well, we don't even know what the App Store is. And for us, that was sort of our trigger point. And then we thought, well, actually, we need to implement a sort of education program into North West London. We do cover 8 boroughs at the end of the day. That's 2.5 million population who 1 in 5, as we know, don't have access to skills or don't have the confidence to access those online tools. So part of my program was around actually implementing an education program where we asked volunteers to come forward, so patients to come forward and actually be trained as a digital ambassador for their local area. So we had quite a few ambassadors come forward, and the funny thing is we assumed that it was just patients, public members who'd come forward, but actually we saw a lot of our workforce staff who were also feeling that they didn't have the skills necessarily to implement solutions that we were working on in North West London. So that then led us to sort of working with Good Things Foundation as well, where we started a few health hubs in our local community. And we piloted a health hub in the borough of Brent. And whilst we've seen hubs in community centres and on high streets, we thought it would be a bit different and try it out in a GP practice. And we're still learning from this because I don't think it's really been done yet, but it was a huge learning for me certainly, because actually we're trying to change the mindset of GPs as well to sort of socially prescribe digital to their patients. So we found that patients are coming forward to our digital hub, dropping in, asking for help, but also there was a role for the GP to play as as the go-to person in your life to get that advice from, and sort of the person that you rely on to give you that safe and secure advice. So if that person in your life could tell you to go to a drop-in clinic and actually learn about IT, learn about digital skills, then that's where we sort of should be going to. And I know it's still going on, and my colleague Carol is in the audience, who's actually still running the program, and it's going quite well. So that's what we've been working on in North West London. And the question around whether I think digital inclusion makes people healthier, yes, I think it does. It gives you a sense of control and empowerment over your health. And not just your health, but just everyday life. We're going towards a very digital world. And if we're not sort of upskilled and sort of aligned with the things that are going on around us, then we are going to be left behind. So I think it's vital.
Thank you. And last but not least, Pete Nuckley, who is internally at Good Things Foundation, a leading light for our NHS widening digital participation programme.
Hi everyone. So I'm Pete. I work for Good Things Foundation. I'm a service designer there, and as Helen said, I've been looking after our NHS-funded widening digital participation programme for a couple of years. And I guess to answer the question, I think the answer has to be yes, otherwise I get sacked. So yes. But I think it's yes with 3 possible caveats. So digital can help the health of people. I think that's categorically true. But what you need is 3 avenues of trust to do this thing. So you need a trusted space, and by trusted space, I mean something like an online centre that's based in a community where it reflects the people who are coming into it. It's not a sanitised area where there's different power dynamics. You need trusted people, and by trusted people, I don't necessarily mean GPs. I mean the people who house these community centres, so they look like you and they act like you, and their only priority is what's your priority, not necessarily the health condition you've got, and they'll hug you and give you a cup of tea, and that is really vital, so you trust them. If you have them 2 things in place, then we've got this thing called digital, which has the sum of human knowledge at our fingertips. If you find the trusted stuff there, then it will work, but you need them 3 avenues for this to work, because if we just do everyone look at the NHS website, we have a lot of barriers. If we just do everyone go into these community centres, we have a lot of barriers because what can they tell people? So all them three things together mean that digital can as a part of a bigger thing, in my view.
That's really helpful. Obviously, when we talk about health, we mean health and well-being, mental health, social care. You know, that we use some of these words. I mean, maybe not the professionals amongst you, but some of those of us that are very focused on how do we make all of this work at a community level. So someone's asked the question, how do we counter the popular press views that digital is bad for you? And we're in the middle of a general election, and we have had many, mainly women MPs standing down because of the abuse that they get online. And so that's what you hear about in the press. So actually, you're doing a digital transformation, you're helping people with digital skills, and you're saying, this is actually going to help you. But what you hear in the press are all these people saying, actually, this is really bad for my life. So how do you counter that?
And I think it's that balance, isn't there? Because there's things that are bad for us when we do things to excess or do things that make us feel uncomfortable. And I think whilst people are saying social media is really bad for you, you know, you get trolls and it's really affected my mental health. On the other hand, there are people where digital has helped their mental health because they're quite socially isolated. They've been able to interact with other people. They've been able to ask people like themselves questions about how they're feeling and, oh, I feel a bit like this, is this okay? And I think often the negative stuff is publicised more than the positive stuff.
Absolutely.
I don't think we're particularly, and I know I can speak for myself, locally very good at selling our story, and shouting about what we're doing and the impact that it's having on people's lives.
Yeah. Have any of you actually met someone who says, no, I don't want to do this, this is bad for me?
You can meet people who are initially reluctant to get involved in anything because there's a perception that digital is bad. And like we were just saying there, it's shouted about more when it goes wrong. It's shouted about much less when it might go right. So there might be an initial reluctance to get involved in this, but it can be very quickly turned around by just saying that if you try out some of this digital stuff in the smallest of ways, see what effect it can have on how you're feeling or how it's answering a question. You know, we've had people come to us who have been recently, say, diagnosed with COPD, and they want some answers for that, how they need to change life, but are scared to interrogate the internet because they've heard that, where do you look? It can give me all this wrong information. If we can make sure that the information they're getting and the surroundings that they're getting it in is friendly and comfortable and trustworthy, and it's where they expect things to be, then some of that concern over using digital can be allayed to quite an extent. And then you get an enthusiasm to go a bit further. You say, well, I've learned that, I understand that. What's next? What else can I look at? Yeah. So that negativity suddenly becomes a desire to do a bit more. Yeah. So it's just picking your way through it carefully.
I have a potentially controversial point about this.
Go for it.
So I think, first of all, life is difficult and dangerous and can be bad for your health. So can the digital world. We just need to be smarter about how people can navigate life normally in the vast majority of circumstances. We just need to know this is another plane of existence where you need to be able to navigate it. You need to look out for bullies like you do in real life and all that sort of stuff. But my biggest, I think, win for this would be if we scrap the term digital. It puts people off. It's a barrier. There's 100 of us in this room. There's 100 different definitions of what digital is. In this room, if we got rid of it, then we would just be saying to people, here's an opportunity to find out information when you need it. So if at 3 o'clock in the morning you need some information about whatever, you can find that digitally. You don't have to look through the Encyclopedia Britannica to do this thing. We don't have to use the word digital for this stuff. Or if you're really struggling and you happen to be in a Facebook group, you can text someone and just go, do you know what, let's meet for a coffee tomorrow, and that will help me out a little bit, and you get support, so it's access to your peers. So the more that we use this term digital, the bigger this divide becomes, in my view, for health.
I agree with Pete. When we use the term digital, I think there's a lot of skepticism around, people are watching me, or I'm getting tracked, or God knows what. I have an example. A year ago or so, we went to a care home, and we were looking at how we can implement, again, digital into a care home. And one of the elderly gentlemen, he said to me, you know, I don't want anything digital. I don't want to use an iPad. I don't want to use a computer. And we asked why, and he said, well, you know, because they're watching me. And there's that conspiracy around government tracking you, and you know, I'm sure there's conspiracy theorists in the room as well. But you know, and when that was said to me, it kind of took me aback a bit, because there's me trying to, you know, create this awareness that there's a lot of good benefits from learning online or going online. And then it was only until like a week later I figured that let me show him what social media can do, just something so simple like Facebook. I know Facebook has its restrictions, but I showed him, you know, I can connect with my family in the US, for example. When I showed him that, he was taken aback and he said, I haven't seen my family in Australia for years. And just that positivity from just, you know, just sharing with him something that was meaningful to me, it sort of gave him that sort of positive insight rather than having that negative sort of view on digital. And yeah, I do think that word digital, you know, there's a bit of confusion around it. But at the end of the day, it's a digital world we're going towards. And I think if we are inclusive of digital and just making sure that we use the word appropriately, that's where you'll see the difference.
Yeah. I've just realised that when I throw this microphone around the room, there's lots of interaction. When I read stuff off a screen with someone called Anonymous, there's like zero interaction with you lot, other than obviously this stuff, which maybe you think is interactive, but anyway. So the next question one is how do we measure the impact? So does the person who asked that question want to put their hand up? Brilliant. Do you want to tell us who you are, where you're from?
I'm Mike Wood from a house association in Wirral, Gentle Living. We've got 13,000 properties and 15,000 odd people living in there. It's sometimes hard to justify campaigns when we don't know what we're going to get back, or who's going to get involved, or who got involved.
Yeah.
So is there any advice, some kind of measuring that impact?
Brilliant, thank you.
I can take some of that.
Yeah.
First of all, it's good to hear someone speak properly with a good accent. So, thank you. So we've done some work on the previous programme with NHS. It depends what you mean by impact. I'm not trying to say that to cop out. I mean, do you mean the financials of it? If you mean what's our return on investment on these things, we've got some reports that we can share with you to say, if you do some of this stuff, you get £6 return for every £1 you spend on digital inclusion. And we can show that if people go through courses like Learn My Way, that they reduce the amount of time the amount of times they go to the GP practice or A&E. So if it's financial, we can share that stuff with you anyway and just give you a matrix on stuff. And I guess we should probably do that more broadly to other people. But then the other stuff's a bit harder. So someone feeling less lonely, or there's some measurements that you can do on that. But this is about how do you have a touch point with someone to baseline them, and then how do you catch up with them to make sure that things are happening. And that's really difficult and time consuming. So I guess our job at Good Things Foundation is to show the stuff that's already worked. So we can say to you guys, look, if you do this with some changes for local context, maybe you'll get a similar thing, although we don't know if it'll work completely in your area. Did that somehow answer?
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of softer case studies and then there's hard
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Jürgen Klopp in a bit. But
But just to add to that, sorry.
Go.
I do agree, and these things are always really quite difficult to measure, especially return on investment if it's to do with cash money, because actually, particularly with the NHS and with social care, there's other things happening. So it's really quite hard to pinpoint that actually digital or improving people's digital skills has reduced the number of people turning up into A&E, because there's internal processes that people are redesigning anyway. How can we attribute that to the digital? So it is quite difficult. We try to look at the qualitative benefits. So actually, as a person, how has it impacted them and changed their lives? So the story, the story side of things.
there's some stuff to talk about, I think, with that. So we've done some work with the homeless community in Hastings and really excluded groups. And some of this is, if we're talking about return on investment for pounds and pence to the NHS, actually, these people haven't been to doctors for 20 years and we've managed to convince them to go to doctors. It's costing you more, sorry, but that person isn't going to die. So I see that as a really good thing. And I'm sort of half joking there. The NHS have been amazing with us to say, no, that's exactly what we want, obviously. But it's not always, if we're moving someone from zero or from the higher scale of exclusion, just nudging them over one, then they have to start accessing services. And that costs money. And if that's our only parameter for these things, then it's not always going to be this huge return on investment. It's going to be that person's alive. That's good enough.
But again, it's that prevention bit, isn't it? You might be signposting somebody to a GP that's never access to GP, but actually it's preventing them from rocking up in A&E because they haven't accessed GP services.
Potentially,
Sarah,
Yeah, just a point about impact. We struggled at sort of how do we measure the impact that our program around education was having and our training was having. The struggle was real because, you know, whilst we have to report on the data, the money, the funds that we've put into this, it was difficult to portray that in a report because you're talking about people's lives. And how do we measure that impact? That, you know, for example, if someone's come to us in a digital hub and they've been trained or they've just been sort of upskilled on a specific thing, when they go home that day, we don't know how that's going to impact their lives. But when they come back is when we actually found that difference. They come back and they've shared with us how they've used the skills, how they've gone home and actually shared their learning with others. And that's for us in North West London, that was our sort of measurement. We measured people's lives and sort of the small episodes that have changed for them. So I do think that it's a difficult thing to measure because you are dealing with people's lives and everyone's life is different and it'll impact everyone in a different way. So yeah.
I think for us, it's always been about trying to do both. It's like the big stuff, the numbers, the channel shift, the money saved, and then the other impact stuff. So has anyone who's not using Slido want to ask a question? Don't be scared of the catching thing. Okay. So let's come to, so who asked, I'm interested in the rural thing because obviously a couple of you work in some rural areas. So who asked a question? No, you're very near. There you go. Yeah. I dropped my phone.
So hello, I'm Sarah. I'm from Malden District Community Voluntary Services. So Malden District is the most rural in Essex. The population in our district is one of the largest older people district populations, but also we have the largest travel time to services in the district as well. So our local authority has just gone digital first. Our local housing association is just about to go digital first. So we've got potentially a very large population of disadvantaged people. And our problem is, how do we get to those people in rural locations who don't have good mobile broadband, or mobile Wi-Fi rather, they can't access from their mobile phone, they have to have broadband, that's a cost. How do we support those people to become digitally included?
So who wants to start?
I'll let you start.
Okay.
Sounds
more
very
rural.
familiar to you, isn't it?
Yeah, I would love to say there's an easy answer. However, I think we approach it in three ways. One way probably lots of people do, which is we go to those people. That might be outreach in other community venues, in village halls, in libraries, where there might be some infrastructure that we can help and use. Or we will take some of our infrastructure with us, so we'll take equipment, whether that be laptops or tablets and Wi-Fi, MiFis, that sort of thing, to get a decent access. So we can do that approach. We also then will invite people to our centre that can have its own issues. Some of the public transport we have is not terrific. You're talking 3 or 4 a day, never mind an hour. So even worse. But if that means that you can timetable those, you can schedule those sessions to come into at the centre, then you can really try and maximise them as well. So you can, yes, cover digital health, but you'll also cover some fun side of things. It could be YouTube, it could be working the smart TV, how the way iPlayer works, all that sort of stuff. So you really try and maximise those options. We also have equipment there that people can use. Which brings to the third bit, which is that we actually loan equipment out. So we will loan people laptops, tablets, Wi-Fi access, Wi-Fi stuff, that sort of thing. So that whatever they are doing in those condensed but important sessions, they don't just leave them when they leave. They actually take the equipment and do it again at home, or if they have a village hall or a library, they can take the equipment, and if it's full, they've still got their own little device. So it's not an easy solution, but there's perhaps ways of mitigating some of those difficulties. I think one of the key ones is when they are available, when they are at your centre, or they are all together, you really maximise it. So those sessions, they might be quite long, but we provide the teas, the coffees, the snacks, all of that sort of stuff. Heavens, we've even sorted out if it includes financial problems, we sort that out as well, get the taxis home, that sort of stuff.
And Clara, do you have any easy answers? No, sorry, Alexis.
I would agree that you have to go to people to where people feel comfortable, but something I would probably add is understanding what some of the issues and challenges are for particular cohorts of people within your locality, because they can be very different issues. You might have some areas where actually the need is much higher than other areas. So it's about understanding where you're going to target some of your approach initially to reach out to those people. That's what I would probably just add to that point.
Great. You want to go on? Yeah.
First of all, I don't like that question, it's too hard. And then secondly, I guess what we try and do in the NHS programme that I'm involved in is take health to where people are, not people to where health is. And we get to do that by going into communities where the houses are right round that community in a lot of built-up areas. What you guys can do is probably the same thing, it just won't be as close, but you can take it closer to those people. So that as a principle is a good thing to take forward, I think. So if that person has to travel an hour instead of 2 hours, we're getting ever closer to them. So hopefully eventually there might be some infrastructure in place where it's in their home, and that's the ideal. But we just want to get ever closer to them, I think, is kind of the conceptually what we're after, I think. But that doesn't solve it, sorry.
Just going back, we can't solve everything. So just take little steps to make improvements. And if it doesn't work, try something else. It's your words, isn't it?
I think, I mean, the other thing, of course, is that, but it's a really good question, because if services are being digitised, actually, then we're excluding people because they don't have good access to transport, and they're on low incomes and they live in rural areas. And so it's a really good question, because obviously we need to find an answer for it, because you can't say you can't access these services. I don't know, does anyone in the room do anything virtually? Does anyone do video conferencing with learners or anything like that? Because I thought it was amazing some of the things we heard from google.org this morning about, all these robots and things and AI, and so there could also be a technology solution. Do you want to tell us about what you do? Or you're really far away. I might need to do this then. Oh! General direction. It was a bit far for me.
Forgive me, I've got a sore throat. Nick Howard from the Workers' Educational Association. Hi, Helen. What we're doing at the moment is really looking at how we can take the adult learning that we offer in community venues across the country and look at how we can take, I'm very loath to use the word pedagogy, but I'm going to throw it in, a style of learning that allows us to take the essence of the learning that I think has been mentioned already, which is about the relationship between people. It's adults alongside other adults, helping them to understand and learn particular skills. And it's trying to take that and put that into an environment which is sometimes completely digital but mostly blended. And I think the idea of using, we're using Zoom, which is a particular video conferencing platform. We're using that combined with our virtual learning environment to offer a blended learning approach. And that starts to try and address that issue, which I think was mentioned by our colleague from Google this morning, which is where the actual sustainability of people in digital learning is like 10-15%, so it's tiny. So it's really trying to take that and make that more meaningful by increasing that human interaction. And I think video conferencing.
So do you teach them how to use Zoom face-to-face? So do you teach them how to use Zoom and then they can then interact?
We're developing, we're developing a way of doing that in a very, very step-by-step approach. We're also looking at using digital champions and volunteers. There's the bringing people together initially as a starting point, helping people, supporting people on how to use apps like Zoom on their smartphone or tablet or whatever particular hardware they have. And then from there, developing their skills.
Brilliant. And we happen to have a new video conferencing, video calling course on LMOA, don't we? Yes? Yes, good. Someone agrees with me. Oh, good throw. Right, I want to ask the next question, which is about how to encourage people to become digitally included before they have a health crisis, wait until they're already under stress, because I think that's a brilliant question, because actually I think a lot of the power that we see in the work that we've done with digital inclusion is very much about that prevention. So who asked that question? Hello. Do you want to add anything to it?
Not particularly, no.
Yeah, we're both kind of looking in trepidation at the microphone, aren't we? Oh, oh, yeah, worst yet. Just say who you are, that would be great.
Right, yeah, I'm Gina Nichols from Buckinghamshire Libraries, and we have a lot of customers when we're talking to them about digital inclusion. Oh no, it's not for me, I don't need it, and it's trying to get them to forward think that there might be an occasion when it will come in useful for them.
So how do we do it? How do we encourage them to do the digital inclusion part before they have the health crisis is the question. Who would like? Sarah? Yeah.
So just part of my experience in North West London, part of our digital ambassador training that we did, we ensured that the training that we provided to the ambassadors, the public that came forward, was tailored to sort of showcase our local app. So our local app was built on the basis that it's a signposting app. So, and also you can find out your information about conditions that are relevant to you. And I think things like that, tools like that would be very important, because actually you're showing patients a tool that they can access to find out, firstly, their local services, should they want to know where to go, but also just to learn a bit more about their condition. Because I think often when people do end up in A&E, it's often because they either don't know how to look after themselves better, and if we provide them at that stage, some information about their condition and what sort of steps they can take to prevent things getting more severe, I think at that stage would be crucial to implement anything digital. So inclusion, the training, anything like that should be at that stage first, and then hopefully that would prevent anything sort of from happening later on. And we found that to be quite useful. But yeah, that was sort of our experience in North West London.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer for Paul. Sorry, how arrogant of me. I'm going to tell you how Paul does it.
Paul can improve.
Yeah, and then Paul can tell you how he really does it. I think people come into destinations in Saltburn and Paul says, "How are you?" And then he offers them a cup of tea, and then they just have a chat. And then during that chat, the person might say, "My housing's, something's happening with my housing," or "I just wanted a coffee," or whatever it is. And through just normal being a human, as Paul is, he's wonderful. Just through being nice, Paul gets to have good conversations. And then you don't have to call it digital inclusion with that person. If you're running a class, you do. But if you're just having a conversation with that person, you go, "I've got an idea. With what you've just told me, why don't we look at this?" And that might be something digital, or it might be a drawing that you've made, or it might be, "Let's go for a walk outside." I come back to my point before, I think we've snookered ourselves because we've called it digital as if it's a separate thing. And what we should be doing, I was looking over there that whole time, I don't know why, I'm so sorry, you're up there. I think that's been our problem with this stuff. So if you just have a normal conversation, you have a bag of tools that you can help people out, some of which will be digital, then the inclusion kind of takes care of itself, and we can sort of sneakily include everyone, if you see what I mean. But I think that's how it works with you, Paul. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if they are digitally excluded to begin with, the first phrase isn't, "Oh, there's a great app to do that," or "Let's go on this website, it's fabulous." It is more, "Let's go for a coffee." To the point where we had a bit of a redesign of our centre for many reasons, but it actually includes an area where you cannot get online. Quite deliberately, you can't get online. And we did that for a reason, that for some people, it can be a distraction. We want to get to know the person and why they are coming forward with whatever it is they're coming forward with. And you develop the relationship and say that, yeah, there might be a solution. You're ticking that over in your head, but we'll not introduce it today. We might not introduce it next week. We'll introduce it at an appropriate time where that person is ready and receptive to a digital option. When that moment arrives, I'm not going to prescribe that, never will. If it doesn't arrive, I'm not going to be overly bothered. But you can bring things in, and so you almost suggest it in an oblique way. It's probably a better phrase than that, but I can't think of it. you might want to look at something on YouTube. You might want to look at something that is entertaining using digital. Doing a jigsaw. We had one person who was beginning to feel quite stressed, but like doing offline jigsaws, boring jigsaws. And we were chatting about all that, and they said, well, yeah, it's great, but I don't have many. I said, I know, why not use one of these? We had a big screen, put it on, there's all of them on there. Oh, I like that. All these did, never done that before. And that was his introduction to digital. And you start to begin that. To make that work, you have to load the site up, you have to find the site, and suddenly you're beginning to introduce it. But you'll have gone home and done his offline jigsaws, and that's great.
Okay, so now we're going to have a quick fire round. So I'm just going to read them off, see who's asked a question, and then choose one of you. If digital is not a good term, what else can we use? Who asked that question? Okay, thank you for that question. So who wants to answer that? No, you can't answer it. Saira?
Yeah, if we don't use digital, what else can we use? I guess we could just say you're learning. You know, like learning is the best tool. I mean, everyone wants to learn more than what they already know, right? So if we just use the word learning and emphasize that, I think that would hopefully ensure that people sort of take that up.
Brilliant. So Pete, I'm saving you for that. Are you planning on developing a how-to guide or module on how digital can be used as a social prescribing module? Whose question is that? Someone's question? Okay, it's a good question. Pete, answer.
We've got one for social prescribing, and there's also another 20 coming for different ways of doing this thing, but there is one, and I will share it with you all after this.
Yeah, put it on Twitter.
Yeah.
So, Alexis, what are the main barriers? What are the main barriers for people with using digital health things? Whose is that? Whose question is that? Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, answer.
I think there's probably two things. I think there's probably the fit and well who don't feel like they need to use digital or have access to digital health and care services. So then they get to a point where it's crisis, so they need to get to a physical place, whether that's A&E, whether that's a GP. I think there's, from conversations that we've had with our population, it's about an understanding, a confidence. We talked about it a bit earlier, but lots of people are frightened that, well, if I use this, then somebody's going to have my data and sell it to some big pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
Can I add something really quick?
Yeah, go
just
for
very
it.
quick. So one of the biggest barriers we've had in such a diverse community is language and culture. Often people don't speak the language, and accessing certain things is completely oblivious. So we need to make sure that we're targeting populations and communities who can then help others with the same language.
That's a really good segue to my last question for you all. At Good Things Foundation, in our NHS Widening Digital Participation Programme, we are now scaling and evaluating a concept called a Digital Health Hub. Sorry, in Northwest London, you're a Digital Health Hub. Do you want to say a little bit about what you did and why it's important to you?
It's important to me because obviously we need to provide a community setting for our population to drop in essentially and learn at their own pace, rather than it being sort of a formulated sort of timed training program, which we've also tried. What we did in Northwest London, I mentioned earlier very briefly that we started one of our hubs in a GP practice. And the reason we started in the GP practice is because that GP practice itself is located within a health centre. And that health centre sees a lot of people coming in and out, a lot of traffic. And that GP centre's opened its doors to even the patients that are not registered with that practice. So anyone from that area, from other areas across the border of the borough, they're able to come in, drop in at any time they want, and just sit and learn using the Learn My Way platform. And you know, we've got a great coordinator who's actually here today over there. I was going to mention you, Carol, because you've done some great work with the programme. And Carol sits with them, and it's often the time spent for each patient can vary, can be up to an hour, up to 2 hours with one person, just going through various things. So how to do a CV, how to just upload documents onto an email, things like that. And it's changed a lot of people's lives. And it's given them the confidence to go away and just do those things themselves. And I think their life and their sort of livelihoods become slightly better by having a bit of ownership over their health and care.
Yeah, brilliant. And the thing that we love about digital health hubs is that what we're doing is we're blending and bridging what I see of as the formal health service and the informal health service.
Yeah.
So Saira, you're a great example, as you are, Alexis, of the formal side, and Paul, you're here as the informal side. So you're a digital health hub as well, so quite different.
Yeah, it's quite different. We were keen to move on with the idea that people could just drop into the centre and in a very informal way learn more about their own health, their family's health perhaps, the health of those that are surrounding them. So we wanted to have that option, the opportunity for people to come and learn how digital can help. And it could be helping those specifics to do with very specific health issues, but equally it can just be that social health thing where people are coming together, being part of a group, and help, all that can help with their emotional side of things. It's quite a big thing happening in our little area that a lot of people are struggling with emotional health and well-being as much as any physical health and well-being. And to have a place, a health hub, for want of any other word, where people can come together, feel safe and comfortable with people who either they know or are getting to know, and talk about things together, that has such a big impact on their emotional health and well-being. And that can knock onto all sorts of things, making them more job ready, making them more, so everything. So having the centre now be able to have a focal point on that was really key to us as a centre, but it's critical to the community as well.
Thank you so much. So we have run out of time. I think we're answering the question, can digital inclusion make us healthier? And I think the answer is yes. Obviously with lots of caveats and great examples. So we're now going to lunch. Sorry, let's thank the panel first. Say thank you.